What is up, Watch fam? Happy Wednesday, and welcome to this week's collection review. I am Christian from Theo and Harris, and today we're going to be diving deep into the watch collection of the King, Mr. Elvis Presley. Exciting! It's exciting. I'm excited. I love the King. All right, before we jump into Elvis's collection, a quick wristwatch check. I am wearing my personal Breitling Super Ocean Heritage. We made an entire in-depth video. When I say we, I mean Anna, our wonderful editor. Made an entire in-depth video on this watch and what it means to me, and really taking a step back, what watches can mean. You know, why watches, in my mind and in the mind of so many, watch geeks, are more meaningful than the Apple Watch or than a tablet or whatever Microsoft is making that people insist is better. Watches are better. So we talked about that in the video. You should watch it. The link is in the description right after this. But my Breitling is not the topic of today's conversation. Today's conversation is a little bit more celebrity, a little bit more rock and roll. So who is Elvis Presley? For those of you who have been sleeping for the last, 70 years, who is Elvis Presley? Photo of Elvis. The Mississippi-born, extremely glamorous, heavily accessorized face of 1950s America and rock and roll. That is Elvis. This is Elvis. No, that's a very sad impersonator. Oh, no, another sad impersonator. That's from Sons of Anarchy. And now we've got the King. Okay, so if it isn't already obvious, what makes Elvis's watches worth talking about? For me, two reasons. One, he's an incredible global celebrity. In my opinion, or it's not factual, I suppose. I don't have evidence to back this up, but probably one of the most famous faces and artists of all time, anywhere in the world. And second, a big jewelry guy. I mean, he touched so much throughout his very short life that there's a lot of collection and memorabilia around him. So his celebrity paired with, the fact that he owned so much and so much luxury, naturally, there is a whole conversation to be had about the history of his wristwatches. So what started it all? This watch, a really terrific late 50s, early 60s Omega Constellation, putting the provenance of the King, on the back burner. This is a terrific watch. I mean, the guy obviously had tremendous taste. An immaculate black gilt dial, a pink gold plated case, which is obviously in the classic constellation shape, really distinct. It's a truly wonderful watch. So like I said, putting Elvis aside, props on your taste, man. And as generous as he was, he actually gifted this watch to his buddy and fellow gospel singer, Charles Hodge. Eventually, as with so much that anyone famous, particularly Elvis, touched over the years, it was brought to auction, actually by Antiquorum, twice. In 2012, it sold for a little over $52,000, which is a pretty big turnout, for a watch that would probably typically trade below $2,500. It is a rare watch, but still, I mean, this model is not a Daytona or a Day-Date or a Patek Perpetual. I mean, it's a beautiful time-only Omega. A watch that represents a lot of value, but doesn't carry a big price tag. But then, unfortunately, in 2014, just 2 years later, the watch sold for $37,000, which to me is sad because the buyer that purchased it in 2012 seems to not really care to have kept it, which to me is sad. I prefer to think that once these tremendous pieces land in collections, they stay there for a while. And if they don't, then they're flipped for a big profit. It's very anticlimactic to see a watch of such provenance purchased and then sold at a pretty tremendous loss, and just 2 years later. Why do I think this happened real quick? I don't think that the crash in price was because of Elvis. I think a lot of the blame is probably to put on Antiquorum. There are a ton of photos of Elvis wearing this watch. There's a ton of documentation. There's no reason that this watch shouldn't be climbing in value, and to see an auction house sell it at a loss just a few years after offering it for the first time, to me is pretty pathetic. And I think it gives a bad reflection on the Elvis watch market, prominent pieces selling at losses. So shame on you, Antiquorum. Okay, so let's move on to another very important, but a much more blingy watch. Actually, a Rolex most of you have probably never heard of because there were just 1,000 ever made. It was the Rolex King Midas, named after the Greek king that turned everything to gold with just his touch. It was actually the most expensive Rolex on the market when it was originally sold, and of course cased in full 18-karat yellow gold. A pretty damn ugly and isolating thing, but if you're familiar with how kind of ugly and isolating Elvis dressed in the 70s, it would probably, be no surprise that this was right up his alley. It was gifted to the king after he sold out 6 consecutive shows at the Houston Astrodome in 1970. And like I said, the production was limited to only 1,000 pieces, and Mr. Presley owned number 343, a shockingly rare Rolex to say the least. What you'll notice about Elvis's particular example, number 343 of the Midas series, is the odd dial configuration, but it isn't an odd dial configuration at all. It's just staining. The Midas, not being cased in a classic Rolex Oyster, was not waterproof, but either Elvis didn't know or didn't care, so as a result of water exposure probably hanging out in a hot tub, it stained. But I suppose that's kind of part of the charm of the watch. Imagining Elvis himself chilling out in a hot tub with God knows how many women probably, Midas in the water. It's just kind of a cool piece of that story to tell. Next up is another super interesting watch, something that is a little bit more understated. It's manufactured by Hamilton, and it's called the Ventura. Elvis was given one to wear as a product placement in the 1961 film Blue Hawaii, and it really put the watch on the map. It was actually introduced a couple of years later in 57. I think it was the first, if not one of the first, electric watches. Definitely the beginning, of what was to come in the world of technology and its integration into watches. A battery-powered watch compared to your grandpa's old mechanical, and its case, kind of futuristic and asymmetric and oddball, reflected that movement, looking into the future, into a different world of design. So it does make sense, that the prince from another planet would love this piece. So that's it. You get it. Elvis loved watches, and his collection has a pretty great story to tell. But if you loved watches and enjoyed this video, subscribe to our channel, join the T&H Watch fam, and stay tuned for more content just like it. I will see you geeks tomorrow to talk about more.